Are we ready to begin?
I'm rolling here.
All right. You're already rolling? All right. Oh, you got that. All right. Richard.
Yes, Stanley.
This is an honor for me to be here questioning you or talking to you about your
No,
past.
you're questioning me, Stan, but I appreciate it, and I'm honored that you would accept the challenge.
Well, tell us where you come from.
Right in Houston, Baghdad, Texas. Born there on April the 3rd, 1927. Stayed there for a couple of years. Times were tough. So Dad couldn't get any work, so they sent me down to San Antonio. This robust place. So I lived with my granny, bless her heart, and she was a little old lady from England. She could quote Shakespeare ad nauseum. She could roll a cigarette with one hand, drank about half a pint of whiskey a day. Taught me to read and write and do arithmetic when I was just a brat. And when it came time to go to school, she said, "Here, go up to the school. Don't let them start you in the first grade, because you can do third grade work and insist on a test." So I did, and they did, and I took the test, and they started me in the third grade, and they put my picture in the paper. Later on, Grandma said, "Worst damn thing I could have done for you. You fell in love with the concept of having your picture in the paper, and you ain't been worth a damn since." I got to thinking back on it. I wonder if Granny was right. That did change my attitude about
Publicity?
who I was, and whether or not I was normal. So I grew up thinking I wasn't normal. I thought I was above normal. I didn't find out I was below normal until I started practicing law around all these other good lawyers and found out how little I knew. But
well, you moved back to Houston, though, didn't you?
Moved back to Houston when I was 12 and went to school here and was playing football in junior high. It was a segregated junior high school because I ran 2 plays in a row at right angles to the long axis of the football field because I was going to get tackled. Didn't advance the ball, but I didn't get tackled. And the coach yelled, "Cut, damn it, what do you think you are, a racehorse?" And it stuck. But I was thinking, if I went to school today in an integrated school, I was running back, they'd be calling me plow horse or stick horse. I never would be a racehorse in today's fast world. Anyway, I grew up, went to school here, then started out at Rice and had an appointment from our congressman to go to the Naval Academy, but I was too young. They wanted me to go to Phillips Exeter. I never heard of it, but it's apparently it's a prep school up east, and so I said, "No, to hell with that." And I went off and got in the Marine Corps. Went over to the South Pacific and got my fanny shot off at EWO. Came back, went to school, got to be a lawyer. I took a test when I was in undergraduate, and because it was available, and they gave me a commission, and in the Navy, but took the test in New Orleans, and they gave me my uniform allowance in cash. Well, I'd never been to New Orleans before, and they gave me cash. Do you think I bought any uniforms? And the answer is
so. What did you do with the cash?
I probably spent it foolishly.
Oh no, wait a second.
They were having the Korean thing going on, and so the skipper was saying, "Where the hell is your uniform?" I'd go to these reserve meetings. I said, "You know the story. They gave me the uniform allowance in cash in New Orleans. They never should have done that." He said, "Well, your butt's going to go to Korea." So I found a way to get out of that and get into the Army, but I had to promise the Army I'd give them 3 years if they paid me to go to school or I took a commission. So I did that part. So I avoided Korea until '53, and then I had to go and gave them a couple of years and came back and started law school in '53 at the U of H.
Where did you
in '56?
Where'd you get your start practicing law?
Right there in Houston, Baghdad, Texas. When I was an undergraduate, though, I used to cut class to go and watch some trials because, like most law schools in those days, they didn't have much education on how to handle yourself in the courtroom, and so the lawyers had to learn the hard way. So I'd go down and watch. Well, I went down and watched John Hill try civil cases, and I went down and watched Percy Foreman try criminal cases.
What was that like?
Oh man, that was educational as hell. Although I learned more from what I didn't have as skill than I learned from the skill. But I remember one time Percy was trying the case where he was representing a lady accused of killing the cop, and the defense was that the cop was going to hit her husband in the head with a pistol, and he had a plastic skull in the courtroom, and he hit it with the pistol, and pieces went everywhere, and he prevailed. So I had a case coming up where my client was alleged to have pulled a knife, pulled a gun and shot his ex-girlfriend because she pulled a knife and was going to stab him in a booth. And so I looked at the rail that separates the lawyers from the jurors, and I could see that if I took that knife that was in evidence and stabbed it into the rail, it would only come through that far. And I was trying to demonstrate that the knife was a prospectively lethal weapon, and that's why my guy had a right to whip out his pistol and shoot. So I got into a frenzy of words and pulled it out and wham, stubbed it in there, and I hit the only stud for about 3 feet, and the knife didn't go into but about that far. Let's see, this is 1987, 2007. That guy ought to be out by now. But I learned, but Percy, one time, Percy was trying a murder case, and while he's in this argument, a little baby began crying over in the spectator area. Without breaking the cadence of what he was saying or losing the continuity of what he was saying, he walked over and he picked up that little baby and put it on his chest, and he patted the little baby on his back, and he went over and finished that argument. And he prevailed. And can you imagine my good luck? Well, 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm making an argument. A little baby starts crying over in the spectator area. I go over and pick the little rascal up. He's bigger than I wanted. I didn't notice the little rat had a chicken. He had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in his hand, open-faced, stuck it on my neck. I picked him up, tried to continue my argument, and he started crying. Mama said, "Give him back. It wasn't worth the $20." Now that guy ought to be getting out of that. But what I learned was that we cannot all do what the other lawyer does, exactly like the other lawyer do it. We have to learn from that. Then we have to do our shtick. But you can't go in and you can't be the other lawyer. You got to be yourself. And jurors, I think jurors are kind of like, like horses or dogs. They can tell when you're afraid of them. And so you need to be afraid in the proper way. You got to have respect for them, but not fear. Because if they sense that fear like an animal does, they'll say he's afraid of us because he knows his client's guilty. And you got to not have that. And you know, when I get to Jack Daniels, I think is my good friend, I get to waxing anecdotally, I think about the great prosecutor there became a judge, and he had a way in every case. He'd walk over to the same place in the courtroom about every time and say, blah, 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 and pits of degradation, and point at the accused. And I don't know what a pit of degradation is, but boy, that's pretty devastating for the jury, and he got a lot of conviction. So I scouted him, and then I went over, and when it came my turn to try the case, I took a piece of masking tape and told the judge I was going to put it on the floor, and it'd come up. I went over and I put an X on the floor. And then in my argument, I said, you know, the learned counsel for the prosecution here is probably going to get up if he stays true to his form, and he's going to say, blah, 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 pits of degradation, going to walk right over here to this X. And it's very moving, and you're obligated, and I want you to listen to him. But you got to remember, it is not evidence. It's the rhetoric of a prosecutor. It is not evidence. Keep your mind on that, and read and understand, and keep your mind on the court's charge. So sure enough, it came his turn. He got up there, and he's like all of us. You know, we get off into the routine of how we want to do it, and he blah 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 blah. And he walked over to that X. He said, "Well, he said I was going to do it. I'm going to do it anyway." And pits of degradation. It didn't work for him because the jury then understood that it was just rhetoric, and it really didn't warrant them considering it as being evidence as against the accused, and that's what's critical. So I learned I learned a lot from watching those good lawyers, and I had the good luck of, I've tried cases with Judge Maloney. He and I went out to, where the heck was it, somewhere out west, Abilene? Was it Abilene?
Was it Amarillo?
Amarillo? No, it wasn't Amarillo. It was
Abilene?
It was Abilene where we did the celebrated case out there, and me and Maloney, and in that case, the judge invited everybody into the chambers after the argument, including the accused, and he said, "Mr. Accused, I ordinarily wouldn't have you back here, but I'm confident this jury is going to acquit you, and I wanted you to be able to come back here." Then he looked at me and said, "Where are you going, Hoss?" I said, "I'm going outside." "For what?" I said, "To prepare the motion for new trial." We just defecated on our sunbonnet.
Haynes, you're the way you describe things, I've never heard anyone else as eloquent as you in describing and publishing something to a jury. I remember one time watching you take a letter and wanting to read the letter and say to a jury, say to the judge, "May I publish this?" And it had different meaning when you spoke. When did you start?
Well, I don't know. I guess I learned when I came back from taking the bar and getting sworn in. I had a case set on the docket in the county court, and that's back in the good old days when they had a spittoon in every courtroom, and a lot of the lawyers and the judges and the jurors chewed tobacco and spit. And so the spittoon was over there near that rail that separates the lawyers from the prospective jurors, and I was nervous, and I got up to go over and pick the jury, and I stuck my foot in the damn spittoon. I was obviously embarrassed, but the jury saw that I was a brand new lawyer and that I was embarrassed, and so they did the right thing and found my client not guilty. So after that, I would move that spittoon over there and kick that thing. And so finally, after about a year and a half, Judge Miller called me up there one morning before trial and said, "Race?" "Yes, Your Honor." He said, "You planning on kicking that damn spittoon today?" I said, "Well, I was, Judge. If you let me kick it one more time, that'll be the end." "Okay, today's it." So I kicked it the last time. But the point is that it gives you a chance to relate to the jury. They got to understand, appreciate how apprehensive you are. You've got such a tremendous burden. You've got the fate of a human being in your hands, even if it's a misdemeanor case. The blight, the stigma, the stain of being convicted of a criminal offense is the last thing is going to be with that human being forever. And so if they don't follow the law and give that human being the benefit of the law, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, then the lawyer has failed in his or her duty. So it's a heavy duty that we got. So I don't envy rather the today's young lawyers, because I've been saying for years that the Constitution's hanging on by its fingernails, and it damn sure is. And today, I don't know where the Fourth Amendment went. The Sixth Amendment, I think now, according to Strickland, is the mirror test, where if you put a mirror under the lawyer's nose and it clouds up a little bit and shows he's alive, it couldn't possibly have been ineffective assistance of counsel that resulted in the conviction. So I'm not sure that today's young lawyers have the same playing ground that we had. And growing up, we all thought, when I leave this playing ground, it needs to be better than it was when I got here. That was the motto, the credo that we all grew up under. But I don't think we're leaving the law playing ground better than it was when we got here for today's young lawyers.
Well,
I think it's tougher.
we're talking. Let's go back. I want to go back in time and talk.
Half a century?
Yeah, I want you go back into the 50s and 60s and talk about who are some of the great lawyers or great cases that started you becoming world famous or infamous.
Yeah, you remember it was Clyde Woody in Texas that took two cases to the Supreme Court of the United States and changed the law with reference to the Fourth Amendment, and made the rest of the United States take a look at Texas, because Texas had its own thing going. And we had Clyde, we had Percy, we had we had this old man from up in Tyler who went up to the Supreme Court and made those people, Weldon and Holcomb, made these people straighten up and look at the law and do the right thing. And so we were going around quoting Weldon and Holcomb for a long time, and our local judge was saying, "Who the hell is Weldon and Holcomb?" I said, "Well, if you read the damn Supreme Court reports, cowboy, you'd know who he is. He's the guy that just made history because he read the law and he applied it properly and he knew what he was doing." But Weldon stayed in a little hick town up in Tyler, which is not a hick town anymore, and I managed to achieve justice for a lot of his folks. I got a chance to try a case with Senor Barrera back in the good old days, and I remember his father had the most unique capacity of handling a witness who answered the question in an irresponsive way and defecated on the sunbonnet of the accused with that answer. Your dad could make a comeback that was outrageous, and I copied it down, and I copied it for years, and nobody does it anymore, so I've forgotten what it is, but it was absolutely genius the way he did it. And I remember in that case, just to demonstrate, we had a really good judge who's now in the Fifth Circuit, and one of our jurors brought some homemade tamales in. We had half a dozen lawyers. So the judge said it was okay to eat the homemade tamales in the United States District Court. And our senior judge, who later went on to become the head of the FBI, and maybe have had a few problems there, but he found out that we were down there eating the hot dogs in the United States District Court, so he sent an order out: no more eating tamales in the United States District Court. And Judge Potter said, "I wonder what he would have done if it had been hot dogs that we were eating," which I thought, wonder what he would have done if we were all down there eating hot dogs. Would he have had the
I
same?
remember that.
But, it doesn't make any difference whether it's a hot dog or a tamale. It's America, and it ought not to have made a difference. And so Judge Potter was right on target when he made that remark. Anyway, your dad was a great guy to work to, Lawyer Barrera. I worked with every good lawyer that came in town. I tried to work for around Texas. Got an opportunity to do it, and it helped me. I carried briefcases. I was just another pretty face. I even had a case with Botsford. He did all the work. I took all the credit. That's the way it should be. Older lawyers take the credit, make the younger lawyers do the work.
Well, in the '60s, you brought a young lawyer on to work for you, a guy named Mike Ramsey.
I stowed him away from another good lawyer.
There's some story I've heard that you won him in a poker game.
I won him in a poker game. I lost him. I won him away from a good lawyer who happened to be from Boston. And a great lawyer, but he had a broad A accent, so he couldn't really convince the Texas jury of what the facts were in the case. But I won Mike away from him in that poker game, and I was trying to think that the pot was more than $100. I think it was. But
Well, you never paid him more than $1.95.
I paid him $38.50 a week rather, whether he needed it or not. And so I managed to get Mike. He was a great lawyer, and he was a great student of the law, and Mike's a great student of human beings. Not only is he a good student of law, but he understands people and how people think and operate and react, and he brings that into the courtroom. We tried cases where I remember when after a few years I let Mike have his first witness in a trial, and I'm sitting next to him and I'm pulling on his shirt. I ask him this, ask him that, tell him this, tell him that. We had an all-male jury, and we were in a kind of a Western community, and he turned around and said, "Would you shut the bleep up?" and used the bleep word, and the all-male jury liked it, and we prevailed. So after that, we had an all-male jury. I would do that in every case, just Mike asked, "Would you shut the bleep up?" And if we had females on the jury, he'd modify it a little bit and cleaned it up. But we had some experiences. I remember one night we were out of town somewhere trying a case, and banged on Mike's door at 7 in the morning. So let's go. He said, "I can't go." I said, "What do you mean you can't go?" He said, "I've lost my shoes." I said, "A grown lawyer, doesn't lose his shoes." And we had motorcycle boots. I said, "Put your motorcycle boots on, dude. Nobody will notice." He had a Pierre Cardin suit, and he had that long hair. He said, "Nobody will notice." I said, "Nobody will notice." So we got down to the courthouse in this country town, and I said, "I want to apologize to my young colleague's shoes. He's somewhere during the night apparently lost his lawyer's shoes." Mike's doing an awful lot. Somebody said, "Happy we prevailed, though," and that's the way it should have been. And so I got Mike, and then I got Zimmerperson, Jack Zimmerman.
Well, was it back in the '60s? You had Mike,
Right.
and who else was with you back then?
In the '60s, I had Mike. I had Jan Fox. I had.
Oh, she came in the '70s because she.
Was it '70s?
Yeah.
No, I had Mike. Mike bailed us out a lot of times.
Ray Bass came with you.
Ray Bass came along in the end. In fact, Ray Bass stayed until I was 50, so that had to be 30 years ago. Because one night on my 50th birthday, I was in my office working late, and he came in and he said, "Race," he said, "I sure appreciate everything you've done for me." And he said, I'm gonna bail out quick." I said, "Why, Ray?" He said, "Well, I don't want to wake up one day and be 50 years old and be sitting in my office sweating under my armpits working like you." So that makes sense to me. I said, "What do you want to be doing?" He said, "I want to be on my bay house, my feet up on the banister, having a cool tequila and looking out, watching the sun go down." Ray Bass is now actively trying cases in Austin, Texas, and he's in his 60s or early 70s. Meaning you can't lay it down. So I had Ray Bass, then I had Zimmerperson. I got Zimmerman when I went up to. I spoke at Quantico. Zimmerman was in the Marine Corps. He was a judge at that time, a major, and we talked. And Zimmerman had been a great athlete here in San Antonio. Went to the Naval Academy, and he wanted to get out and practice, and I told him that if he wanted to come with me, and I told him that if he would come with me, that within a year I'd have him making as much as a general makes. So within a year he came in and said, remember you telling me that? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm not making as much as a general makes. I said, gentlemen, you dumb patootie. You should have looked. General of what army? You're making as much as the general of the Bolivian army. You should ask. I didn't ask that other question. That's why you're making $38.50 a week. But he's a great lawyer. And we had good times together. We tried cases in Texas and in Oklahoma and in Louisiana, and we traveled around. We had
And somewhere in there, you brought
skateboard.
well, we'll get the skateboard in a second. You had lawyer Schaefer.
Oh, Randy Schaefer, yeah, Randy. Of course, you know Randy.
He came in about in the mid '70s
He
to
was
work
in
for
the
you.
'70s, yeah. Randy can write the law as well as anybody that ever sat on the Supreme Court of the United States. He's absolutely brilliant, and he is a poet, and he is also very open. You know, he'll tell you exactly what he thinks. He doesn't pull any punches, so he's really a pleasure to work with. But he'll tell you how it is. If you've dropped the ball, he doesn't mind telling you dropped the ball. This is what you should have done. So, yeah, we had. I gave him the toughest cases we had, and he went down there and knocked the ball out of the park. I remember one time we were in South Texas, and the government had embraced one of the bad guys and given him immunity in exchange for the testimony. So in the closing argument, I said, you know, the government has embraced one of the biggest rogues that ever came down the path, and forgiven him of all his sins and his crimes, and endorsed him, and now he's sitting in the back of this courtroom right now, smirking like a jackass eating cactus. And I pointed at him, and he gave me the blessing. He flipped me the bird. And I've always subscribed to the theory, what would a real lawyer do? And I try to think what a real lawyer would do, and so I thought, what would a real lawyer do? He said, got a jury in the box, got a guy out there just flipping the bird, and I said, the real lawyer would make this bird go to the jury. I said, did you see that, ladies and gentlemen? This man has so little regard for the sanctity of the oath that you took as jurors that he makes that obscene gesture to you. What a shame. God, I hope you can forgive him, but I hope you can never forget him. Well, then I thought, well, a real lawyer might put it on the judge too. Your Honor, same thing. Well, when the case was over, the judge was ticked off. The jury did the right thing. The judge had a hearing to determine if this guy had really flipped the bird. Randy's sitting there. I got him on the stand, and the guy said that, well, his index finger was up in the air, but he had been picking his nose. And Randy said, and Randy must have an IQ of 200. And he leaned over and he goes, ask him what he did with the booger. I said, Randy, that is not a bulletproof question. What if the guy says I stuck him under the seat? What are we going to do, go back there and look? It's not bulletproof, dude. But Randy, he said it out of a sense of humor, but he has a great sense of humor, and he contributed.
He tells the story that you took him into a courtroom for when he was just started working for you. You just became a licensed lawyer, and you put him at counsel table next to the defendant, and said, "I'll be right back," and never returned. Is that a true story?
No, that's apocryphal. I was there for the trial, but for the closing arguments. But when the verdict, I left him there for the verdict.
Oh.
Well, frankly, I thought that the verdict might be one of those that makes your basic defense lawyer suicidal, and I didn't want any suicidal ideation, so I left Randy there. But somehow he pulled it through. He didn't have to commit suicide, neither did I.
And then you had then the skateboard came on board.
Oh, skateboard was a piece of work. You know, skateboard. I went to the first couple of weddings that he had. I ain't going to no more because, well,
He's only on 4.
that's all. Yeah, but Skate could write for Saturday Night Live. He's quick as a cat. He's got that Saturday Night Live attitude about him. I remember that one case where we were in the federal court, and when he was talking about, he made the opening argument, and I was going to make the closing argument. He was talking about the government embracing one of the rogues in the case and giving them sanctity and all that. And he said, and the government stuck its tongue down his throat. Not only did they embrace it, they stuck their tongue down his throat. I objected. I know he's my co-counsel. We're in the federal court. Can you imagine? The government stuck its tongue down. The jury liked that part, and they acquitted our client. And I think largely because skateboard had the wherewithal to get up there and tell them like it was, and he did. He wouldn't mind telling them. I remember we did the celebrated case down in Kerrville, the slave ranch trial, and the significant defendant was unable to control his flatulence, and so I wouldn't sit by him because in the courtroom, I mean, it'd turn your hair gray. You can see mine is already turned gray, but you could hear it 40 yards away. I mean, this guy could. I mean, his flatulence was outrageous, so I made him sit by Ray Bass and Dan Cogdell. And Cogdell had gone out, and in that case, the bad guy had. They claimed that we had tortured people that we'd kidnapped, that we'd enticed off Highway 10 to come work on the slave ranch. Made them sign a blank, I'm satisfied with everybody, what they did me here, and I leave everything. But, apparently we allegedly shocked cattle prodded this guy to make him confess to something. And so we had tape recorded this cattle prodding of this guy, and you could hear the cattle prod go off, and this guy was screaming, yelling, confess bad stuff. So Dan went out and got us a cattle prod and brought it into the office, and I said, Dan, this cattle prod, boy, that cattle prod will knock a 2,000-pound bull 14 feet in the air. So we got to looking at it, but if it had a little screw on the top, you take it out, you put a penny in there, or a dime, screw it back in there, it'd make the same noise, but the electricity didn't come out of the prong. So we got the state's cattle prod down in Kerrville at the recess and put the dime in there, and then at recess we all sat around, got a whole front 4 rows of press and people down there. I picked it up and I said, I can't believe that these people, these prosecutors, as capable as they are, want to take a position that this cattle prod can kill a human being. My God, that ain't true. Stuck it up to my neck. Well, it didn't hurt because it was starting out, And I put it down, took the thing out. Well, they were all shocked and amazed. When the prosecutor came in, he was really a neat guy. They told him about that. He picked it up, knocked him over in the jury box. But yeah, if old skateboard had been blocking for me when I was playing football, I could have been an All-American. Because if he saw a television cameraman, I'm out of the way. But he had the best things to say to the press, and of course he's very photographic. He's handsome as a movie star, and he's quick as a cat, smart. He's smart as a whip. So yeah, he's a fun guy to work with. I was sorry to see him go. I wish he'd have stayed working for $38.50 a week, but he wouldn't do it. He's too smart for that. So stuck. Then I had Foxy. Fox 83 was brilliant.
Yeah.
Fox 83 is the one that got that $42 million verdict up in Dallas. $42 million and 24 cents. And so after the verdict came in, we figured out what the hell was the 24 cents, and the jury said, we just wanted you to know we put our 2 cents in. I can't remember if she went with me. I went up to the country to do a malpractice case, and I remember the lawyer on the other side was a good lawyer. He got up in the closing argument and said, well, Mr. Haynes never bothered to tell you what he thought. You as a juror ought to give his 59-year-old cigarette-smoking, beer-drinking client if you give her anything. But he didn't even suggest to you. So he really poo-pooed me for not mentioning the damage amount. So when it came my turn, I said, you know what I was going to do, folks? I was going to leave it up to you 12 people to be fair and reasonable about it. But since he's challenged me, I said, how about $33 million, cowboy? How does that grab you? Well, they stayed out about an hour and a half and came back with $33 million. And the foreman came up and said, well, Mr. Haynes, why didn't you ask for $50 million? I said, because I'm an idiot. I couldn't. But, they're good lawyers. lawyers that helping you do those things. So
Well, go back in time. I remember reading about a case that change of venue representing some police officers
oh yeah, yeah.
back in the early '70s, and there was a change of venue up to New Braunfels,
Yeah, New Braunfields.
and it was against Erwin Ernst.
Erwin the Great Ernst. So he became a great judge. Erwin Ernst was a brilliant man. He still is. You know, he's still a judge. But he was a brilliant prosecutor. And one time in a case that involved my client alleged to have stolen a boxcar load of number 2 Idaho russet Idaho potatoes.
Potatoes?
Potatoes, yeah, up in Idaho. And we had a judge who was a great judge, but from time to time he would get off into Jack Daniels, and so in the morning after Jack Daniels you had to be understanding of him until such time as he came to his. So that particular morning, Ernie took the bill of lading that had been filled out in Idaho and marked it as an exhibit and said, "I offer this into evidence, the court, please." I looked at it and said, "Well, I'm going to object it, the court, please. It's hearsay. You know, it's done up in Idaho. It's not certified." And Ernie said to the judge, "Well, it is hearsay, Your Honor, but it's an exception to the hearsay rule." The judge said, "An exception to the hearsay rule? What's the exception?" He said, "It's the Idaho potato rule." "What's the Idaho potato rule?" Said, "Anything said or done in the presence of those Idaho potatoes is admissible." The judge looked over at me and said, "What do you think, Hoss?" And I said, "Judge, I think you've got me fair and square." I knew Ernie would give up on it. We're just testing the judge. And after a few minutes, the judge called me up and said, "Now, boys, the judge has got a headache. The court's got a headache this morning. I don't want any more of this nonsense until after 11 o'clock. That was a real judge. You don't get real judges anymore. They're too serious.
Who was that judge?
Crookhammer. Remember Judge Arnold Crookhammer? A great judge. He was a great judge. Anyway, I dethroned you. You were going to say something about.
Well, no, I was asking about the police officers in New Braunfels.
Yeah.
Was that one of your first really big high publicity cases?
No, that was after the John Hill case.
John Hill was first?
Yeah, that was they call that the Killer Pigs case, the one that they moved to New Braunfels, and somebody just set off their alarm. But the Killer Pigs case was an interesting case because Ernie prosecuted it, and somebody else came down. It was a crackerjack good prosecutor, and we stayed. We got to let out each day at 3 o'clock because they had daylight savings time, and we had rural people on the jury. They wanted to go tend to their crops, and so we rented a house from a good friend at Lake McQueenie. So we'd go there every day, and we found out that people were taking not cockroaches, grasshoppers, and catching fish with them. So we thought one night, after a little bout with the Jack Daniels, that we would corner the market on grasshoppers. So we went around to every place around the lake McQueenie, and we bought all the grasshoppers they could and brought them back and put them in the house. Well, we couldn't contain them, and they contaminated the house, and I had to pay to have it decontaminated. But we had every grasshopper around Lake McQueenie, so you couldn't catch a fish without talking to us. So the concept of works, you know, except it didn't make us rich, but we did have the grasshoppers.
So John Hill was first, then you got all...
I think John Hill was one of the first cases that made a lot of press. And then the Killer Pigs maybe. And then somewhere in there was I can't remember the case now. Was Gus's case up in Abilene.
Gus Mutcher?
Yeah. And then somewhere in there was Cullen. I know Cullen's case came in the 70s.
Yeah, that was the first time I watched you. It was in the late 70s in Cullen Davis, 78.
Up in Dallas.
Yeah.
That was trial number 2
In Houston.
in Houston, yeah. And
Vicky Daniels.
Vicky Daniels was in there. I can't remember if it was before or after Cullen.
I think it was after Cullen.
But there's a book
Yeah,
out
78,
about
79.
Vicky Daniels. And
Cullen 3 was up in Amarillo.
Cullen 1 was started in Fort Worth, got booted out of Fort Worth, went to Amarillo, we tried it. Cullen 2 was tried in Houston, was a hung jury, and we went back up and tried it in Fort Worth, so it was a bounce around.
Wasn't there a Cullen 3?
No, it was just we had a hung jury in Houston.
Okay.
And so we had to do it again up in Fort Worth, and that's the case where a really great judge, Judge Gray, who was was misquoted into saying, "Racehorse will not turn my courtroom into a circus." He said, and the press said, in the meanwhile, Haynes was outside unloading the elephants.
You tried Pam Fielder up in Fort Worth in
Yeah,
'82.
Pam was up there. Pam was a great case. It was a case where they came out with some cowboy writer up in Fort Worth came out with this cowboy song called "Whips and Chains" and Racehorse Haynes, and because we were trying that case, and it was a case where this doctor had read a book about the story of O, and he had begun practicing what the book indicated that men ought to practice on women sexually, and so he had a sex toy room, and he had all these whips and chains and things that he got. So it was a packed courtroom every morning. It was so packed that they put out little chits, like Baskin Robbins, and people would get a number, and then they let them in the courtroom. And one day, they had a nice old lady sitting there. She had to be in her 70s, and the news guy came up to her and said, "Lady, why do you get here at 7 in the morning to get in to see this, this trial, this sordid escapades of these people?" She said, on TV, "Are you kidding? We got whips and chains and Racehorse Haynes." So by that night, by 5 o'clock, that guy had written that song, "Whips and Chains and Racehorse Haynes." It played on the radio, and it got a lot of press. And I made some speech somewhere up east to a bar group, and they gave me a whip and some chains, the Whips and Chains program. Anyway, that was a great. That was a great case. I know that the doctor who was the deceased in the case had the boat that he called Goldfinger, and he was a gynecologist. And one of the things that he did, he permitted people who were not doctors or studying to be doctors to come into his clinic, put on the white suit, and then go look at ladies in the stirrups. When I found out about that, I wanted to get that to the jury. And the
How would you get that into a murder trial?
Well, that was the case. It's a murder case, we tried to get everything in, and so the prosecutor, "No, Judge, we're not going to let him get that in. It's too prejudicial and it's not relevant." Judge said, granted, and so I couldn't get it in. Then the judge found out that one of the guys that came over to the clinic from time to time, put on a white smock, was a lawyer who was running against the judge. So the issue of lawyers got to be a little more sensitive issue. Anyway, that got in.
I remember reading that in the record.
Yeah, and then I can't remember. Did you get that turned around on?
Yeah.
You got that turned around for that lady on.
Battered women syndrome.
Yeah, that's right, the battered woman syndrome. Yeah, you did a great job there, Stan. What the heck was her name? Fielder. Yeah.
Pam Fielder.
Nice lady. During that trial, there's a real lawyer. Got a necktie on, got his hair combed, got his working suit on, making money while the kid's going around in a sports shirt.
Just answer the questions. Just answer the questions.
I like that. How you doing, bud? Good to see you. Come on in here. There's one of my heroes right there. You're Roy Barrera, licenciado, abogado.
Big man.
Hey, good to see you, brother. You all right? You looking good.
Have you got anything here that you need?
It looks like it. I see you got the big brass eagle still out in front that I've been admiring all these years.
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to leave it to?
What can I do? I can't take it with me.
You can sell it to some of your friends. If they could raise some cash. Isn't that a beautiful eagle? Now I have a penchant for brass eagles, and I have them in my house. I bought them, but not one as big as that or as expensive as
That belongs to Nick.
It does?
He's the brassy one in this area.
Well, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
I
it is.
looked at it 20 years ago and tried to get it away, remember?
Yeah.
I waited till you guys closed down at night, and then I tried to steal it, but I couldn't do it.
So we're now in the 80s.
Oh, God, we got 20 more years to go, 27 to go.
Haynes, we could go on with you for telling stories forever.
I doubt it, but go ahead.
Your career sort of changed in the late 70s, early 80s, because you're winning these high publicity cases. The nation is watching Racehorse Haynes.
Mm-hmm.
The media is coming to you, and what was that like, the change?
all of a sudden I was being called every day by the paparazzi.
Yeah.
I had to learn not to pick my nose in public. That's tough to do. If you grew up in the Heights out in Houston, it's not easy. No, it's it's interesting what the press needs to do, but sometimes the press loses focus on what its object is, the object of the exercise is, and so I think the lawyers needs to combat, if he can, the other side's press comments in the press, and it's a battle of the lawyers and the press, which is kind of stupid, because that's not where the issues need to be resolved. But unfortunately, in today's world, issues are resolved in the press. I noticed this morning on the paper, they got Paris Hilton all over the morning news because the poor little girl needs to go back to court or don't need to go back to court, or she's getting special treatment because she's a star, or she's rich, or she's an alcoholic. The point is, poor little girl's apparently an addict and she needs some help. That's it. Simple. But nobody pays attention to that anymore. So what happened to me?
Yeah,
I got famous. I was on the Tonight Show. I was on the Letterman Show. I was on the what's his name? James Rivera.
Geraldo.
Geraldo. I know Geraldo's name back when he was a lawyer was Jerry Rivers. Geraldo Rivers. Rivera. Latino, but he didn't want to admit that he was Latino, and so he changed his name a little bit while he was practicing. Then when he got to be a celebrity, he went back to being Latino. So I was on his show, and I was in the makeup room, and the lady was putting powder on me to make me look better, and she was giving me a tip. She said, I said, what do you think Geraldo's going to ask me? He said, he's going to ask you how much you make, how much you earn. I said, oh, good point. So I called him in the hall. He said, yeah, good to see you. I said, good to be here. And I said, I understand one of the things you're going to ask me is how much I make a year. Well, I said, well, if you do, that's okay, because I'll ask you how much you make a year. He didn't ask. But I got to be on some of those shows, and national TV shows, and that always results in, as you know, 1,525 nuts calling. You know, they see you on TV and they call, so we have a code. I hate to tell anybody this, if they ever look at those call books and see that code out to the side, knows that we think whoever called was a nut. But you get a lot of nut calls when you get your name in the paper or on the TV, as you guys all know. But you got to answer those calls, and you got to feel sorry for a lot of those people, because even though they're nutty, they are suffering from some real concerns about whether the FBI is following them, or in their living room, or somebody's putting something in their oatmeal, or, you know. So human beings that are having problems, and that's what we deal with, is human beings that have problems that are affected by the law.
Did it increase the pressure on you when you went to the courtroom and you won Colin Davis and you were winning these cases?
Everybody expects you to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, you know, one of the skills that lawyers have that I don't have a lot of is the skill to negotiate. I have very poor negotiation skills. If somebody wants to negotiate with me, I'd sometimes lose my cool and say, the hell with it, let's put the 12 in the box and go. I'm just, I let my own ego overcome the need to be rational and resolve it, because a lot of cases need resolution short of trial, and good lawyers can do it. So I have lawyers that I call upon to help me do that, because I just don't negotiate well. And so one of the turning points in my life was when I realized I'm a lousy negotiator. If you know, I tend to put my own ego in front of the concerns of my client. That's not good. You got to keep in mind your client's best interest, and a lot of times these criminal cases need to be resolved short of a trial by way of an agreement, and I just didn't have the skill to do it. And I go in there and they want to talk to me, and I lose my cool and say, just the hell with you, let's put 12 in the box and see what they say, you know, like I'm Mr. Stud. The 12 people in the box have not always said this, you know, attaboy for you. I remember one time I made an argument in the felony case that I thought was just beautiful. The timing was good, the words came to me, I didn't have a mental lapse. I had a mixed jury, I had 7 and 5, 7 men, 5 ladies, which is a group that I like. And one of the ladies looked just like my grandmother. And when I said, I'm right about that, am I not? And she'd do like this. And they're wrong, aren't they? And she'd do like this. And so the argument ended good, and the verdict came back, and it was mine. And So I always go up and I ask the jurors afterwards, was there anything that I could have done or should have done that would have made resolution by you of the issues put to you by the court simpler? What should I have done? What could I have done? You got any suggestions for me? I want to do a better job. And I went up to Grandma, because saved her for last, because she was my grandma. God, she loved me throughout the whole trial. I said, Granny, and I read this, Mrs. Butterfield, was there anything I could have done? And she said, I'll tell you one thing, young man. Yes, Grandma. Yes, ma'am. She said, if you'd have talked another 2 minutes, you'd have put that son of a bitch in the penitentiary. Was it that good, Grandma? Damn, I thought I'd really knocking the ball out of the park. I did not know that I wasn't knocking the ball out of the park. I was hair lipping my client. But one of the good things that happened over the years is that you could go in those old courthouses, before we redid our courthouses, the initial jury rooms were made for no females. So the facility, the bathroom facility in the jury room had gaps under the door that wide because the guys didn't care if you could hear what the exchange was going on in the can. But when they got ladies in there, the ladies were a little bit sensitive to the noise that is occasioned by the discharge of properties from the body, period, whatever. But you could go and listen outside in some of the courtrooms. You could stand outside and you could listen to what's going on in the. You could listen to what's going on in the jury room. So you learned a great deal. Ooh, I wonder if this is a client. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Kimberly who? Oh, I'm in San Antonio in a meeting right now, Kimberly. I'll have to talk to you later, darling. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you. She's famous. I ought to talk to her. She's big in Washington. I could be famous.
One day.
Someday I will be famous. Well, I'm going to hang out with your pappy. He'll make me famous. The kid looks better than you, doesn't he?
A little
you
better.
You looked that way when you were his age.
A little better.
You had that cold dark hair, you had that
Yeah.
nice smile.
I look a whole lot better than he.
Can you identify on the record to whom you're speaking about?
He's taller than you, though. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, I fed him better.
He ate better than you did, didn't
That's
he?
right.
Thank God.
One of the things all parents want to do is let their kids have more than they had.
Yeah.
And we grew up in an era where, there wasn't a whole lot around. Now today, the kids are so silk stocking oriented and spoiled rotten that I'm not sure that they have some of them are not sure that they have their eye on the ball, which problems me because a lot of times the kids that the DAs can hire in the big cities like you are the kids that graduated at the top of their class and in the big law schools. And they don't have, grew up in private schools, they grew up silk stocking, they don't have any idea what the working man does on Monday night watching football at the honky tonk, they don't have any idea what it's like for poor people out in the wards and just in the ghettos and out in the heights and places. They just don't have any way to relate to them, and so they don't bring any background of understanding into the prosecutorial arena. And so they just want to prosecute, period, and that's a shame because they don't understand the humanity that's occasioned by some of these people. One of the cases that really stands out in my mind is when I was, years ago, I took the case of a poor black man who was accused of stealing materials off a construction site, and the witnesses against him were his white colleagues, and they were the ones who were stealing the material, and they just blamed him. And so I tried the hell out of that thing. It was pro bono, he didn't have anything, and we got a jury verdict, and his wife and his kids were hugging me in the courtroom, and that night they had a party for me out in the ghetto, out in the wards where they lived, in a little shotgun house, and they had a little barbecue, and they had some signs that the kids said, "God bless lawyer Racehorse," and they couldn't spell lawyer, L-A-W-E-R, lawyer Racehorse, lawyer horse. But I left there that night feeling stronger, better, more satisfied with my activities than I have even when somebody paid me a significant legal fee, for trying the case, because I'd done something I thought to enhance the quality of life of those people, because that man was not guilty, and because I expended the maximum effort and got lucky. Justice was done, but that's the point. And then you get the flip side of that. I remember a case where I represented an old man who worked in the bank, nice old man, gray haired, no background history of criminal conduct at all. And I thought he was innocent, and I just tried the case as vigorous as they could. He's supposed to have been stealing from the bank. And when the bailiff came out when the jurors came out with their verdict, I looked and I could tell by the look on the juror that was a favorable verdict. So I turned to my client and I said, I believe this would be your verdict. And if that's accurate, if they found you not guilty after the judge discharges them, I want you to thank the jury and thank the court. And so, not guilty. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're excused. Whereupon my client stood up and said, I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll never do it again. Why? Why? Why did I let him say that? What was I thinking? Why didn't I tell him, don't say anything unless I have told you that it's okay to say it? But then I got to think about what kind of a mark did that make on the jury? Did it disqualify them from ever being good jurors again in another case because they're going to remember that? And that one episode of human conduct was going to keep them from being fair, open-minded, and impartial. And that bothered the hell out of me, because some other lawyer might pick them because I had them on my jury, and the verdict, they could tell, was a favorable jury for the defense, but I'd already poisoned them. And so I went around talking to those jurors afterwards and said, I need you to tell me as honest as you can when you thought about that, when you talked about that with your wife and your children and your friends at work, what impact did it have on you as a human being? And it had a hell of an impact on those people as human beings. It made them divert their attention from him to the lawyer. You know, it depends on who the lawyer is. And you may have experienced that too, that a lot of times the jurors will say, oh, he's got that guy for a lawyer, he must be guilty. And I've had that come up, as I know you have in cases, and I've had here not too long back, I had, what's his name's little brother involved with me, Randy's little brother.
John.
Oh, Josh.
No, not Josh. That's
Kent.
Ken, yeah, who's a great lawyer, but he's co-counsel, and I got some member on the jury saying, well, Mr. Haynes, if this guy is that's on trial is innocent, why has he got you